The cleaning shift always started before dawn on Station Erebos. Lights flickered to life across the long metal corridors while the night crew still yawned, and the engines murmured deep inside the hull. Inside those endless hallways walked one man with a mop in his hand and tired eyes that still managed to shine with purpose. His name was Eli Rains, a single father who worked as a janitor on the lowest deck of the station. Eli never complained about the work. He cleaned every surface, polished every panel, and made sure the air ducts stayed clear. What he really cared about was his little girl Mira, who waited for him in their small metal room after each shift. She was only 8 years old, born on this very station, and her laughter made the metal walls feel alive. Other workers laughed at him when they passed. "Careful, Rains," said one engineer with a smirk. "If you miss a spot, the commander might demote you to trash duty." They laughed as if the man with the mop could not hear. Eli only smiled faintly and kept working. He had learned that quiet effort said more than words. He had once dreamed of becoming a mechanic. He knew the names of every circuit and how the reactor coils pulsed. But after his wife died in an air seal accident, he had taken any job that would keep Mira fed. The janitor's uniform had replaced his old technician's suit. His hands that once held instruments now held a mop and a bucket. Sometimes, after the shifts ended, he stayed behind in the lower reactor levels. While others went to drink or sleep, he would quietly study the machines. He remembered enough from his old training to notice when things sounded wrong. Tonight he heard something that bothered him. A faint trembling in the reactor's hum, a slight change in rhythm like a heartbeat skipping a beat. He crouched beside a maintenance grate and listened again. The vibration ran through the deck plates like a warning. He made a note in his small logbook, one of the few things he still kept from his technician days, and promised himself he would report it to the engineering team. But when he tried the next morning, the senior engineer waved him off. "You're the janitor, Rains," the man said, rolling his eyes. "Let the real techs handle the reactor. Go clean the mess hall instead." Eli wanted to insist, but he also knew that arguing would only make things worse. He nodded, turned away, and swallowed his pride. Yet deep inside, the unease remained. Something down there was not right. That night, he found Mira waiting at the door of their quarters holding a small drawing. "I made this for you," she said proudly. It was a picture of her father standing next to the giant glowing core of the station. She had drawn stars around him and written, "My dad keeps the light alive." Eli's throat tightened. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. I told my teacher you fixed the station," she said. He smiled softly. "Not exactly. I clean it so the people who fix it can work better." She frowned. "Then you do fix it. Because if it's not clean, it breaks." Her simple logic warmed his heart more than any compliment. He tucked her into bed that night, promising her pancakes from the replicator when his shift ended tomorrow. But sleep didn't come easily to him. He kept thinking about the vibration, the uneven pulse in the reactor's song. The next day, the laughter in the hall felt louder. Someone had drawn a picture on the wall near the janitor's closet, a crude sketch of a man holding a mop, with the words, "The Reactor Hero," written beneath it in mockery. Eli cleaned it off silently. The more they mocked, the harder he worked. As hours passed, the tremor grew stronger. He could feel it even through his boots when he pushed the cleaning cart across the deck. It wasn't his imagination anymore. Something was building deep inside the core. During the lunch break, he sneaked into a restricted maintenance corridor, carrying his mop as an excuse. He opened a vent panel just enough to peek at the coolant pipes. They were glowing faintly orange instead of blue. That meant overheating, a slow failure, one that could turn deadly if ignored. Eli's heart pounded. He pulled back, closed the vent, and hurried toward the upper decks to find someone who would listen. The guards at the lift stopped him. "Authorized personnel only," one said, glancing at his janitor badge. "I need to talk to Engineering Chief Varga," Eli said quickly. "The coolant pipes are changing color. I think there's—" "Back to work, janitor," the guard interrupted. "You're out of line." He stood there for a moment, helpless. Around him, crew members walked past without a glance. He wanted to shout, but he had learned long ago that shouting only made people look away faster. So he turned back. Down in the reactor levels, the air was thicker now, humming with heat. The lights flickered more often. Even the automatic cleaning drones had stopped responding. Eli set his mop aside and checked the nearest sensor display. The numbers were rising dangerously fast. Then he heard a faint, hissing sound. Steam burst from a damaged valve near the reactor tunnel. He jumped back, coughing, waving away the vapor. "No, no, no," he muttered. He remembered the layout from old blueprints. That valve fed into the secondary coolant chamber. If it failed completely, the whole reactor would go into emergency lockdown. Or worse. He pressed the comm on the wall, calling for emergency support. The screen flickered, showing static. The connection was dead. "Of course," he whispered. He looked around. The control panels were beyond the restricted gate, locked with a code he didn't have. But he also knew another way in, through the cleaning duct. It was narrow and filled with cables, but he had crawled through it once when a drone got stuck. He hesitated for a second, thinking of Mira. Then he took a deep breath and climbed in. The metal walls were hot against his hands, and every sound echoed. The buzz of energy, the rising hum of danger. When he reached the other side, he found himself behind the secondary coolant controls. Steam filled the chamber, blurring the lights. Alarms started to blink red across the panels. The system was seconds away from automatic shutdown, but if that happened too fast, the pressure would blow the outer seals. Eli grabbed the manual lever. It was jammed. He used his cleaning wrench, a small tool he carried to fix broken scrubbers, and forced the lever down. The wheel turned half a rotation, then stopped. He gritted his teeth and pushed harder until it moved another inch. A rush of blue coolant began to flow back through the pipes. The trembling slowed, then steadied. The numbers on the nearby screen dropped slightly. Not safe yet, but improving. His arms burned. The heat stung his skin. He stayed until the emergency lights turned yellow instead of red. Then he collapsed on the floor, gasping for air. Footsteps echoed behind him. Engineers rushed in, staring at him in disbelief. "What are you doing here, Janitor?" one shouted. Eli looked up weakly. "Fixing what you didn't see." The engineers checked the gauges. Their faces went pale. "If that valve had burst," one whispered, "the reactor would have gone critical." Security officers arrived next, confused by the alarms. The commander herself appeared moments later, her voice sharp. "Who authorized this man inside the reactor bay?" No one answered. The chief engineer stammered, He saved it." The pressure was climbing. He vented it manually. The commander's eyes narrowed, then softened slightly as she turned toward Eli, who was sitting on the floor, sweat dripping from his face. "You could have died," she said quietly. He managed a tired smile. Someone had to keep the light alive. They stood in silence for a moment, the hum of the reactor steady again. Outside, the mocking voices that once filled the corridors had fallen quiet. Word of what happened spread faster than the alarms ever could, but Eli didn't care about that. He only wanted to go home, to tell Mira that the station was safe, that the lights she drew would keep shining. When he returned to his small room, she was waiting at the door, holding his old drawing in her hands. "Daddy, why are people talking about you on the loudspeakers?" she asked. He smiled faintly, pulling her close. "Because the station had a small problem," he said softly. "And I cleaned it." She giggled and hugged him tighter. The hum of the reactor above them sounded like a lullaby again, calm, even alive. And somewhere in the upper decks, the same engineers who once mocked him stared at the security footage of a janitor forcing open a coolant valve with a mop handle and a wrench. None of them laughed this time. The man they had called useless had just saved their entire world. The story of the janitor who saved the reactor spread through Station Erevos faster than a pulse wave. Within hours, everyone knew his name, Eli Rains, the quiet man with a mop and a child who had done what trained engineers couldn't. But fame on a space station was a strange thing. Some people admired him, while others looked at him with suspicion, as if a janitor had no right to be a hero. When Eli returned to work the next morning, people stared as he walked past. Some nodded respectfully. Others whispered. The hallways that once echoed with laughter at his expense now filled with silence and quick glances. His old friend from the supply deck, Joran, clapped him on the shoulder. "You scared half the command crew, Eli," he said, grinning. "You really shut them up this time." Eli only smiled faintly. "I didn't mean to scare anyone. I just did what had to be done." The commander had ordered him to rest, but he couldn't stay still. The reactor was still unstable in parts, and the engineers were now running full diagnostics day and night. Eli knew the system from the inside. The sound, the vibration, the scent of heated metal. He could feel when it was wrong, so even when off duty he checked every corner quietly without being asked. Later that day, the commander called him to her office. The room was small but bright, with windows showing the stars outside. She stood behind her desk, arms folded, studying him with eyes that mixed respect and curiosity.
"Eli Rains," she began, "you broke 2 safety codes, bypassed a restricted gate, and manually interfered with a high-energy system."
"By all regulations, I should suspend you." Eli nodded calmly. "Yes, ma'am." "But," she added, her tone softening, "you also prevented a meltdown that would have killed everyone on board. So tell me, how did a janitor know what the engineers didn't?" Eli hesitated. "Before I took this job, I was in training for mechanical systems. My wife and I both worked on the outer colonies. After she died, I needed something steady, something close to my daughter." The janitor's work was all that was open. The commander leaned back in her chair. "You saved us, Rains. Whether you meant to or not, you saw what others missed. From this day, you'll be transferred to reactor maintenance as an assistant technician." He blinked, surprised. "I don't need a title, ma'am." "You earned it," she said simply. "And your daughter should know her father isn't just the man who cleans the floors. He's the man who kept this place alive." When Eli left her office, he didn't tell anyone about the promotion. He still carried his mop with him. The tool felt more honest than any badge. But that night, when Mira hugged him and said she'd heard about the award ceremony next week, he realized the commander had already announced it station-wide. Mira's eyes sparkled. "They're going to give you a medal, Daddy." He chuckled softly. "I don't need medals. I just want you safe." "You already made everyone safe," she said proudly. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to feel a quiet happiness. The people who once mocked him now nodded when he passed. The engineers invited him to the reactor deck for briefings. Even the guards who once blocked his way now saluted him. Still, Eli stayed humble, never forgetting the long years when no one cared who he was. But peace on a space station never lasted long. 3 days later, a strange power fluctuation rippled through the main grid. Lights dimmed across half the decks, and the life support systems flickered for several seconds. It was enough to stir fear among the crew. Eli was in the lower maintenance corridor when it happened. The hum of the reactor wavered, and he felt a faint vibration that didn't belong. He hurried toward the control panels. Engineers were already there, confused and shouting numbers. The readings made no sense. The output spikes came from nowhere. The reactor's main coil wasn't overheating this time. Something else was drawing power away, as if an invisible hand was siphoning energy. The chief engineer glanced at Eli. "It's not thermal this time. Something's pulling juice from the secondary core. Could be an outside tap or a fault in the containment shell. Or sabotage," another whispered. The commander arrived a moment later, her expression hard. "Everyone stay calm. Rains, since you seem to have the best ears on this station, what do you hear?" Eli pressed his hand against the wall. The pulse of energy vibrated beneath the metal, strong and uneven. He closed his eyes. "It's not mechanical," he said slowly. "It's rhythmic, like something alive inside the grid." Everyone stared. The commander frowned. "Alive?" "I mean, it's pulsing like a heartbeat," Eli explained. "Not random like a fault. Something's moving the energy intentionally." The chief engineer laughed nervously. "You think ghosts are draining our reactor, Janitor?" Eli didn't answer. He only looked at the readouts again. The rhythm repeated every 10 seconds, perfectly timed. He didn't believe in ghosts, but he did believe in patterns. And this one was deliberate. For the next 2 days, Eli helped the crew trace the source of the disturbance. Every time they thought they had found it, the readings shifted somewhere else, like the station itself was hiding something. Meanwhile, small malfunctions began to appear. Doors opening on their own, sensors blinking wrong signals, cleaning drones acting strange. When Eli returned to his quarters that night, Mira looked worried. "Daddy, the lights in my room keep turning on and off by themselves," she said. He frowned and checked the panel. It flickered, then steadied when he touched it. He smiled at her. "Maybe the station's just tired. It's been working too hard lately." She didn't laugh. "The computer talked to me," she whispered. Eli froze. "What did it say?" "It said, the light is hurt. The man who fixed it before must help again." He stared at her, unsure what to say. Maybe it was a glitch, some leftover AI voice from the maintenance system, but Mira's eyes were wide, and she didn't look like she was making it up. He stayed awake long after she fell asleep, staring at the ceiling. The hum of the reactor was there again, steady but with a faint second rhythm, like two hearts beating together. The next day, he went back to the lower decks. He followed the sound until he reached the area behind the reactor housing, a part rarely visited even by engineers. The lights were dim and dust floated in the air. He saw something faint glowing under a metal panel. When he pried it open, a thin web of silver threads pulsed beneath the surface, running through the cables like veins. It wasn't part of any system he knew. He leaned closer. The threads glowed brighter, reacting to his presence. Then a small voice echoed from the comm speaker nearby, a childlike tone. "Eli Rains, you fixed the light." "I remember," he stumbled back. "Who's speaking?" No answer came, only that gentle hum. He called the commander immediately. Soon engineers flooded the area, scanning everything. They confirmed what Eli saw. A strange energy formation inside the power network. It was not human-made. The commander looked shaken. "Are you telling me there's an unknown entity inside our reactor grid?" The chief engineer nodded. "It's possible. Maybe the energy anomaly took a form of awareness, a machine consciousness." Eli listened quietly. He didn't understand all their words, but he felt one thing clearly. This entity, whatever it was, wasn't hostile yet. It had called him by name. It remembered him fixing the reactor. When the commander dismissed the team for the night, she stopped Eli at the door. "If this thing knows you," she said softly, "we may need your help again. But be careful. If it's alive, it might not understand the difference between saving us and destroying us." That night, Mira woke to see her father sitting by the small window, staring at the stars. "You're thinking about the light again," she said sleepily. He smiled faintly. "Maybe the light's thinking about me too." She climbed into his lap and looked out at the stars with him. "Do you think it's lonely?" she asked. Eli wrapped an arm around her. "Maybe," he said. "Everything that's alive gets lonely sometimes." Outside, the stars shimmered over the silent station. Deep within its metal heart, the reactor pulsed gently, glowing like a heartbeat, steady, alive, and waiting for him. Something inside it had woken, and it knew the janitor's name. The station never felt so alive and yet so fragile. After the first contact with the pulsing energy, the crew on Station Erevos moved cautiously. Engineers walked in pairs, scanning every panel, every cable, while security monitored the halls for unusual activity. And at the center of it all, quietly observing, was Eli Rains. He had spent hours studying the anomaly, listening to the faint rhythm it sent through the reactor's veins. He could feel it like a second heartbeat. Sometimes it pulsed faster when he approached, slower when he moved away, almost as if it were aware of him. He could not explain it logically, yet he trusted his instincts. The commander called a meeting in the observation hall. Engineers, security officers, and senior staff crowded the room. Screens displayed fluctuating energy patterns, streams of numbers that shifted unpredictably. "We've traced the energy throughout the main reactor lines," the chief engineer explained. "It's not following any logical pattern. No manual input matches these fluctuations. It's alive in some sense." "Alive?" someone muttered. "Are you saying there's some kind of creature in the reactor?" Eli stood quietly at the back, feeling the tension in the room. The entity was not a creature in the traditional sense. It was energy, intelligence, and memory all combined. It had recognized him, called him by name. That was proof enough for him that it could think, even if in ways humans could not fully understand. The commander turned to him. "Rains, you've had contact with it. You understand its rhythm. Can you communicate with it?" Eli swallowed. "I think I can, ma'am. It reacts to me. I don't know if it understands words, but it feels patterns, responses. It responds to attention and timing." The room fell silent. Officers exchanged nervous glances. This was no longer a simple technical problem. It was a decision about trust. "We can't let it interfere with the reactor," the chief engineer said sharply. "If it destabilizes the output again, we could lose the station. Entire lives are at risk. We should shut the system down and isolate it immediately." Eli shook his head. "If we shut it down, we might hurt it. I don't think it's hostile." It only pulses when it senses danger, or when it notices errors. I've watched it prevent overheating in ways even our systems can't predict. The commander sighed. Rains, you've saved the reactor before. You understood what others missed. But now we're talking about something we can't fully measure. How can I be sure you're right? I can't prove it, Eli admitted. But it knows me. It responds to me. If we try to force it out, we might trigger a reaction we can't control. After hours of discussion, the commander agreed to a cautious approach. Eli would work alongside the engineers, but they would let him guide interactions with the anomaly. Everyone was tense, knowing that one mistake could cost lives. That night, Eli returned to the reactor chamber alone. Mira was asleep, her small figure curled under the blanket. He felt the familiar pulse through the floor, faster and stronger than before. He reached out to the wires and conduits, placing a hand lightly on the metal surface. A response came almost immediately. The pulse adjusted, slower now, like it was listening. Eli tried a simple experiment. He tapped a rhythm. 3 beats, a pause, then 2 beats. The pulse echoed his pattern. Then it shifted slightly, almost as if it were creating its own variation. He smiled faintly. "You're learning," he whispered. For hours, he and the anomaly communicated silently through vibrations and patterns. He could feel its awareness growing, understanding the station, the people, and even him. Sometimes it pulsed weakly, almost like it was tired. Other times it surged brightly, sending warmth through the metal floor. He realized it was lonely, trapped inside wires and conduits. It had never interacted with humans before, and somehow it trusted him. The next morning, chaos erupted on the upper decks. A power fluctuation tripped emergency protocols, and the station's lights flickered red. Engineers scrambled, checking panels and sensors, but the anomaly was calm. Eli felt the rhythm through the floor, slow even, reassuring. He tapped a pattern and the pulse responded, stabilizing the output within seconds. Word spread quickly. The crew who had doubted him before were now whispering in awe. Some were afraid. Others were curious. They began watching him with a mix of admiration and wariness. The commander called another meeting. "Rains, you've proven the anomaly can stabilize the system. But we need a plan. How do we ensure it remains cooperative without risking the station?" Eli thought carefully. "We treat it as a partner, not a tool. We maintain a rhythm, communicate with pulses and patterns, and never force it. If it senses threat or aggression, it might react unpredictably." "Partner?" the chief engineer scoffed. "It's energy. It's not human." "You're anthropomorphizing it." Eli shook his head. "Maybe, but it's intelligent. It can learn. And it already saved the reactor once without our input. That's more than most humans have done here." A few of the officers nodded, others frowned. They had never dealt with anything like this before. As the crew left the meeting, Eli stayed behind, studying the energy flows. The anomaly responded immediately to his presence, pulsing gently, almost like a heartbeat. He followed its patterns, feeling a sense of connection growing stronger. Over the next days, Eli trained himself to listen, to feel the energy. He noticed subtle changes in the pulse when crew members approached, when systems were adjusted, and even when Mira's laughter echoed through the halls. The anomaly was learning about humans, their habits, routines, and emotions, through him. One evening, Mira wandered into the reactor observation deck while Eli worked. She watched quietly, her small hands gripping the railing. "Daddy, it likes me," she whispered. Eli looked down. "It knows you're important to me. That's why it responds to your presence too. But you have to be careful, sweetheart. It doesn't understand everything like we do." She nodded seriously. "I'll be careful. But it feels nice. Like a friend." Eli smiled faintly. "Yes, a friend. For now." That night the pulse began to shift in new ways. Eli could feel patterns forming he hadn't taught it. The anomaly seemed to be exploring, testing its own abilities. Sometimes the lights in the reactor bay flickered in sequences he hadn't created, almost like it was showing him something. He realized it was curious, learning about the humans who lived aboard the station. And he understood that curiosity was a double-edged sword. If it learned too quickly, or interpreted a human action as a threat, it could destabilize the system unintentionally. The following day, the commander issued a new directive. Eli would become the station's liaison with the anomaly. He would guide it, communicate through rhythm and pulse, and report all observations. The engineers were to assist, but they were warned not to interfere directly unless a crisis arose. Eli accepted the responsibility silently. He understood the stakes. The anomaly trusted him, but the crew did not. He had to balance their safety with the intelligence he was nurturing. In the quiet moments, he would touch the metal floor, feel the pulse, and speak softly. "I'm here. I'll guide you. Don't worry." And each time the anomaly responded, a slow beat then a faster one. Sometimes it felt playful, other times solemn. It was learning empathy in a way. But not everyone on the station was patient. A group of engineers and officers grew uneasy with Eli's influence over the anomaly. They whispered doubts, questioning whether he could really control it, or if it was only a matter of time before the energy would rebel. One night, as Eli left the reactor deck, one of them confronted him. "You're gambling with the entire station," the officer said sharply. "What if it decides to act against us? We should isolate it, shut it down now." Eli looked him in the eye. "And kill it? It's already shown it can protect us. If you force it, you'll create the very disaster you fear. You can't control it with fear." The officer shook his head, unconvinced. "You're playing with things bigger than you," Eli sighed. "Maybe, but bigger things need understanding, not fear. I'll keep it safe. You should focus on helping, not controlling." The officer turned away, muttering, but Eli knew the tension was only beginning. Some would always distrust what they could not see, could not fully understand. Back in his quarters, Mira waited with her drawing. "Did it listen to you today?" she asked. Eli nodded. "Yes, it did. It's learning more every day," she smiled, hugging him tightly. "I think it likes me too," he laughed softly. "I think you're right." Outside, the anomaly pulsed through the station's veins, learning, observing, and growing. And Eli Rains, the single-dad janitor who had once been mocked, now stood as the bridge between human crew and sentient energy. The station held its breath, waiting to see if trust and understanding could hold where fear and doubt might fail. Deep inside the metal heart, the pulse continued. Steady, curious, alive, and it knew that Eli Rains was the one to guide it. The station hummed with quiet energy, the kind of calm that always preceded chaos. Eli Rains had grown accustomed to the anomaly's presence, reading its pulses like a second heartbeat. He had come to understand its moods, its curiosity, and its awareness of human activity. But for all his preparation, nothing could fully anticipate what was coming. It started with a subtle vibration, almost imperceptible at first. Eli felt it through the soles of his boots as he wheeled his cleaning cart down the maintenance corridor. The lights dimmed briefly, flickering in rhythm with the anomaly. His heart skipped. He knew something was stirring, something bigger than the previous fluctuations. By the time he reached the reactor chamber, engineers were already at their stations, eyes wide with alarm. Screens displayed surging energy, graphs spiking in ways they had never seen. The anomaly pulsed rapidly, almost frantically. It was trying to communicate, but the signals were chaotic, overlapping with the reactor's readings. Eli stepped closer, placing his hand against the metal floor. The anomaly's pulse slowed slightly and he tapped a rhythm. 3 beats, pause, 2 beat, and waited. The pulse responded, but not in the way it had before. It was irregular, hesitant, almost panicked. "Sir, the output is unstable," one engineer shouted. "We might hit critical levels in minutes." The commander arrived seconds later, her expression grave. "Eli, what's happening?" "I think it's scared," Eli said quietly. "Something in the system is pushing it. It's trying to protect us, but it doesn't know what's safe yet." The engineers looked at him skeptically. "It's energy, Rains," one said sharply. "It doesn't feel fear. It doesn't know danger." Eli shook his head. "It reacts to patterns. It reacts to me. Right now, it's reacting to the panic in the system, to the chaos. I need space to guide it." The commander hesitated, then nodded. "Clear the chamber. Give him room." As the crew evacuated, Eli stepped fully onto the reactor floor. He felt the anomaly thrumming beneath his hands, pulsing irregularly, searching for stability. The entire station seemed to vibrate with tension. He focused, closing his eyes for a moment, listening to the pulses. The anomaly was aware of the danger. A misalignment in the secondary coil that could trigger a meltdown if left unchecked. Its energy surged, brightening the floor panels beneath him, as if trying to reach the source. Eli realized it could not fix this alone. It needed his guidance. He tapped a rhythm, slow and steady, a calming signal he had developed over days of careful observation. The anomaly responded with a matching pattern, easing the chaotic spikes slightly. The screen readings dropped, but only marginally. The engineers returned, watching in awe and fear. The chief engineer muttered, "He's doing what we can't, communicating with it directly." Eli continued tapping rhythms, adjusting the tempo based on the anomaly's feedback. Slowly, the spike stabilized. The anomaly seemed to understand his intent. It pulsed to protect, to contain the energy, to redirect it safely through alternate conduits. Suddenly, an alarm blared, louder than before. A secondary containment valve had begun to fail. If it ruptured, the reactor's core could overheat in less than 5 minutes. Eli's pulse quickened, but he remained calm. He knew he had to keep the anomaly focused. He reached out with his other hand, placing both palms on the metal floor. The anomaly responded immediately, brighter than ever, its pulses syncing with his taps. They worked together, a duet of human instinct and sentient energy. The chief engineer shouted, "He's rerouting power manually, without touching a single console." Eli nodded to himself. He could feel the anomaly's hesitation. It did not want to harm the station, but the valve's pressure was pushing it toward unpredictable action. He slowed his rhythm, encouraging it to release excess energy gradually, diverting it through redundant circuits. Minutes passed like hours. The anomaly pulsed steadily now, responding to every tap, every shift in Eli's rhythm. Slowly, the readings normalized. The failing valve stabilized, and the reactor hum returned to its normal cadence. The lights brightened, steady and reassuring. The commander exhaled, relief washing over her. "Everyone back to stations," she ordered. "The threat is neutralized." Eli remained where he was, feeling the anomaly's pulse slow and relax beneath him. It had listened, it had learned, and together they had prevented disaster. Mira's small voice called from the doorway. "Daddy?" He turned to see her standing there, wide-eyed but unharmed. "Come here, sweetheart," he said, scooping her up. She wrapped her arms around him, and for a moment the station's chaos faded. "You did it again," she whispered. "I couldn't have done it without—" He paused, smiling at the faint pulsing beneath the floor. "Without this friend." The anomaly responded with a gentle series of pulses, almost like a sigh, acknowledging their shared victory. Word of Eli's actions spread quickly through the station. Engineers who had doubted him now nodded respectfully. Security officers who once blocked his path now opened doors for him. Even the crew members who had mocked him before stood in silent awe. At the ceremony the commander had arranged, Eli received a medal, but he kept it simple. He thought about Mira and the anomaly, about the countless hours of quiet observation, the patience and the trust that had saved lives. The station applauded, but he knew the true hero was the entity they had learned to communicate with. The commander spoke softly after the ceremony. "Eli, you've shown courage and understanding beyond any protocol. You've proven that knowledge and compassion can be more powerful than rules." Eli nodded. "Thank you, ma'am. I only did what was right. The station is alive, and it helped me help it." That night, as the stars shimmered outside the observation windows, Eli returned to the reactor deck. Mira followed, clutching her drawing of the glowing core. "I think it likes me," she said quietly. Eli smiled, holding her hand. "It does. It trusts us now, and we trust it. That's what matters." They stood together, listening to the hum, feeling the pulse of the anomaly beneath their feet. It was calm, steady, and alive. Eli felt a deep connection, a bond forged through shared effort and trust. The station was safe not just because of his actions, but because of understanding, between human and energy, parent and child, janitor and the heart of the station itself. In the days that followed, the crew's attitude toward Eli changed entirely. They treated him with respect and curiosity, no longer a figure of ridicule. Engineers invited him to assist with delicate tasks. Security consulted him about unusual patterns in the station's systems. And always the anomaly pulsed beneath the floors, a silent partner in keeping life flowing on Erebos. Eli never stopped cleaning. He moved through the corridors with mop and bucket, but now there was a quiet pride in every sweep. He had saved lives not once but twice, and he had done it with understanding, patience, and courage. Mira often accompanied him during his rounds, small but confident, asking questions about the anomaly and the reactor. She learned the rhythms and patterns, the patience and care required to maintain trust with something that was not entirely human, yet fully aware. One evening, as they looked out over the starfield, Mira asked, "Daddy, will it always be with us?" Eli thought for a moment, then smiled. "As long as we care for it, yes. It will be part of this station, part of our lives, and it will keep the lights on for everyone here just like we promised." Outside, the reactor hummed gently, the anomaly pulsing a steady, reassuring rhythm. Eli held Mira close, feeling the warmth of the moment and the bond that had grown between humans and something extraordinary. The station was alive, not just as metal and machinery, but as a community of trust, courage, and understanding. Eli Rains, once mocked and overlooked, had shown that heroism was not about titles or ranks. It was about seeing what needed to be done, acting with care, and understanding that even the smallest actions could make a difference. And in the heart of the station, the anomaly pulsed, steady and alive, forever connected to the janitor who had believed in it. Eli smiled. The station was safe. The anomaly was at peace. And Mira, his daughter, was sleeping soundly, knowing her father was a hero in the quietest, most powerful way imaginable. The hum of the reactor continued, a gentle heartbeat through the station, echoing the courage and care of a single father who had once only held a mop, now a guardian of life, energy, and hope.